Good evening, Fedi.
How are you guys?
Hi, Fedi. We're good.
Hello, hello. I see we still have participants trickling down in. I'm just gonna open the chat box as well, just so that I can see it at all times. Yeah, right. Good evening once again. My name is Ferdinand Mukete. I'm one of the professional team members at Endunamoo, and quite excited to actually be wrapping up the year and with the APC workshop tonight and Wednesday night. This is our way of wrapping up our program, and also we just decided to open it to everyone and just indicate exactly where we're coming from, what the expectations of the APC assessment are, and also to wish you the best, for starting on Saturday. I always say to everyone that APC assessment starts the moment the pre-release information is released. So as a result, your exam or your assessment, guys, starts at 8 o'clock on the 12th of December. And from there on, you need to be demonstrating your competence. I'm going to be presenting tonight with Rendani Mutelo. Rendani is also a professional team member for Endunamoo, and we've been presenting some of the materials together throughout the year. Rendani will be joining me at some points and parts of our presentation tonight. And I'm going to keep it quite an interactive session. Some candidates might have either been part of earlier programs and also some of the journeys that we've traveled. I hope you're not going to be bored. You're going to still find this useful. Right. Let's kick off. And the focus of day one of the workshop, which is this evening, is just to set the scene in terms of what is the expectation before the assessment day. Okay, remember I said the assessment starts on the 12th of December, on Saturday the 12th. And throughout the 5-day, what is the expectation? What should one be doing? What are the don'ts and don't do's, and what are the do's that one must actually bear in mind? I want to keep this session as interactive as possible because that's how you're going to be actually learning, especially to actually put into practice some of the information that I'll be sharing, and also learning from each other. Okay. So in order just to kick off and to start, I guess one has to always, before approaching an APC assessment, this is probably the right time to actually take a minute for every single one of us to take a minute and reflect on what a chartered accountant of South Africa is. What are the expectations of a chartered accountant in South Africa? So I don't want you to come to a point after the 17th and say that assessment was too difficult, or how could they have expected us to do that? If you know and you've taken time to reflect on what a chartered accountant of South Africa is, or what are the responsibility of a chartered accountant in South Africa are, then you will realize that there is a lot at stake It could go into any direction. What do I mean by that? I mean, the CA 2025 competency framework defines a chartered accountant as a responsible leader in business. A responsible leader in business. That's quite a lot. And remember, APC is the final assessment to determine who is a responsible leader in business. So there is quite a weight, a significant amount of weight on that assessment to ensure that it only lets through those responsible leaders in business. Who are those people? Those are the people that exercise good judgment, that work on acts of impropriety. So if something is improper, they act on it. They act on it. They don't look the other way. They make good judgment, meaning they also demonstrate good ethical leadership. That is acting on an impropriety. They always act to safeguard the public interest. They've got the public interest at heart. They let go of their own interest. They let go of the interest of those that will benefit them, but they look at the best interest of the public. And they do so with rigor and integrity. These are esteemed leaders, guys. Because these are esteemed leaders, then that's where we say, right, you are eligible to be called a chartered accountant in South Africa. What are some of the skills that they demonstrate? They are versatile. They are adaptable. They can be thrown in any environment and they will do extremely well. Meaning they could have spent millions of years in public sector, but throw them into the private sector, they will adapt immediately and they will demonstrate a significant impact, meaning they will be very impactful from day one. You will not always notice them when you walk into the room. They can switch industries and they will still do well. Hence, it's not published as to which industry is coming through in the 2020 APC case study, because we are able to use that assessment of professional competence to evaluate who is able to demonstrate a versatile skill for today and for the future. Once recognized, they are highly respected. They are highly performing individuals, always forward-thinking, and most importantly, always creating value in what they do. Whatever field they are in, they are responsible for creating long-term value. Those are CAs, guys. And as a result, they are globally recognized. If you pick any CASA, or if you go and ask any international, any country about a CA of SA, if they will be willing to hire them, the idea is that at a heartbeat, they are hireable. So as a result, guys, I want you guys to reflect on this and understand that over the years, up until this point, you've been investing in your human capital. You've been investing in yourself to be called a responsible leader in business. I will pause here and just want to get your views. any views. You can pop them into the chat box and tell me, what do you think? Or tell me, are you ready to be declared a responsible leader in business? How do you feel about that? It's quite a responsibility. Are you ready? Just use the chat box, indicate to me, I am ready, or I'm not ready because of the following reasons. Even when you're ready, tell me why. Why do you think you are ready to be a CASA? I see people are just saying ready. Indicate to me, what makes you so ready? What do you think distinguish you from a man on the street that you will be handpicked and be referred to a responsible leader in business? This case saying, I'm ready to add value. Wow. Want to make difference in poverty. Been working towards this designation for 12 years. Pure determination and hard work with the experience. Nice, Natasha. But tell me, why would you be ready? Yes, I see you have been determined to work through it, but would you be referred to as someone responsible? We deliver excellence in everything we do, problem solver, innovators. I like that. Ready to add value, ready to plow back to the community, taking risk of working for the municipality. Interesting that you call it taking risk, but we'll talk about that. Okay, well equipped and mentally ready. I like Elaine is saying, because I've traveled this journey for 7 years and I've been equipped with all the skills I need, and this is my dream. I'm ready to lead others by example. And I like what you're saying, lead others by example and motivate. That is quite empowering and empowering change, Elaine, and also it sounds like you will make an impact. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Matatu. Thanks, Unati. Thanks, Tinashe. I see it's the comments keep coming. I'll move on. Wait, I guess the question then becomes, who is this responsible? We've learned about the qualities. What is the expectation? What should they be demonstrating? But really, how do we unpack this responsible leader in business? And to the Endunamoo family, you will know this is one of the first slides I've demonstrated or given you at the beginning of the program. But now it's time to say, are we able to actually demonstrate these 3 bubbles and core the center of it? The 3 bubbles I'm talking about is to say there are a number of cognitive skills, there are a number of values and attitudes that are being evaluated before we say, this person is a responsible leader in business. So I always call it the 3 bubbles. And I'm going to start with the first bubble, the blue bubble. The blue bubble is your professional values and attitudes. So an assessment of professional competence deeply assess your professional values and your attitude. What are those values and attitudes? Again, use the chat box. What are those professional values and attitudes that I'm talking about, that I'm saying they are being assessed? I just want to see. I'll look at them from 1 to 10. When I'm saying 1 to 10, I'm talking about a candidate 1 to 10. Integrity. Awesome, Jeanette. That is absolutely one of the values or attitude that is being assessed. Integrity aligns to ethical leadership. Exactly, Dimakazu, ethically. It's quite interesting. I saw a number saying professional competence. Guys, professional competence is everything. All the bubbles leads you to competent professional or a professionally competent candidate. But when I'm talking about the values and attitudes, I'm talking to specific things. And integrity or ethical leadership is one of them. You guys spoke a lot about plowing back, giving back to the community and the society that you live in. That is what we call citizenship. That is one of the core values. How deep do you care? And when I'm talking about care, I'm not talking about caring for yourself. I'm not talking about caring for your next of kin. I'm not talking about caring for the people in your circle. I'm talking about caring for the public interest, adding value. So citizenship, ethical leadership, and leadership in general. So those are the professional values and attitudes that we're looking at. That is the blue bubble, guys. It's being assessed. On the right-hand side, the green bubble is another area that is deeply being assessed by the APC program. So what are these enabling competencies? The enabling competencies are the competencies that enables you to be a responsible leader in business. They enable you. What are those? Think about communication skills. Think about business writing. Think about critical thinking. Okay, think about digital acumen. Okay, would you struggle to use that e-writing, for instance? If you do, and then it leads you to be incapacitated on the day of the assessment, maybe digital acumen has failed you. But we'll talk about other things such as emotional intelligence, emotional, now the word left me, emotional display. Yes, you need to demonstrate emotional display and emotional resilience. I wanted to say emotional resilience initially. And we'll talk about all those enabling competencies. What about business acumen? Are you able to understand exactly how the company is making money? Jeanette, I see you've raised your hand. I'm not sure if you want to say something or it's a mistake, but if you want to ask something, go ahead. It doesn't look like Jeanette wants to make a comment. But indeed, those are enabling competencies that are core to an assessment of professional competence. The other competency area that is being assessed is technical competence, the purple bubble. APC deeply assess technical competence. I know there was a myth around APC not being an assessment of technical competence. Yes, technical competence is not the core that is being assessed, but it is being assessed equally against all the other three bubbles. Can you see my three bubbles are equal? It's because technical competence is the foundation on which all the case studies are being written through. It's the foundation. So if a technical trigger is there in your case study, you've got to be a subject area specialist or a subject area expert in that field. You've got to get yourself ready and prepared to walk that technical area. Maybe the myth was created by the fact that we say technical competency is assumed. Of course, we assume that every single one of you guys that is on this call tonight has got technical competence. That is a basic foundation. Why? Because you've walked through the journey. The 12-year journey that you guys are talking about, the 7-year journey, you've done your undergrad, you've done your CTA or a postgraduate diploma in accounting, and then you've actually been successful in the initial test of competence, which is the core of assessing your technical competence. But you've got to demonstrate even technical competence in APC. So as a result, I'm saying my purple bubble is technical competence. So all this are being assessed to determine who is a responsible leader in business, with something that is core at the center here. What is at the center? There we're talking about your integrated thinking. So pulling all these things together, meaning being able to use a technical task to demonstrate ethical leadership, being able to use a technical task to communicate very well with your audience, it be the board or whoever you're rating the technical opinion to. It being a technical task or a pervasive task, using it to actually indicate that you know that as much as this is a pervasive task, you can leverage off some of the technical work that you've read. So pulling all these things together in a task or an assessment then shows that you've got integrated thinking. You are able to integrate a number of different areas to come up with the best solution that one can use. That is what a responsible leader in business does. And the green rectangle on the far left says exactly that. A responsible leader implies that a CA should always display professional values and attitudes, have the full range of technical competencies, full range of a professional accountant, and those enabling competencies to demonstrate responsible leadership qualities in a specific domain. And your domain in the next couple of days will be in the industry, the company, or whatever setup you are being placed in from the Saturday, the 12th of December. Any question so far? Because then now I think I've instilled enough what is expected of you. You can ask in the chat box or raise your hand if you would like. I want to use this email to challenge your enabling competencies. As we read through this email, tell me, just type in the chat box in terms of what do you see wrong with the email? What do you see wrong in the email? Sean, How are you keeping under these lockdowns? Hope you are missing our Friday night drinks. Not, lol. Here it goes. Revenue has been set to consistent throughout the years. I would like to bring it to your attention if you have considered any chance of the revenue to increase due to expansions which might be made on the company as demand for more products rise. If demand increases, therefore prices also increase and revenue will increase. In 2018, when demand was 50K, revenue was 3 million. But 2019, when demand was 55K, revenue was only 3.1 million. But this year, we think demand of 58K and same revenue of 3.1 million. Just think about it. It doesn't make sense. As much as I'm happy with our increase in demand, I'm worried if our delivery and logistic team will cope with this. They are all black and could take some of our products home. How can we tighten our controls here? Top candidate. You go back to the chat box and see what you guys illustrated or noted as the issues. Bufuno is saying the email is professional. That's a good thing, eh, Bufuno? Unprofessional. Salutation and signature seem too casual. Sorry, not. No. It is not in a professional context. Grammar. Where did they miss the grammar, Karabo? Be very specific about where the issue of grammar came through. Unprofessional tone, not clear. Factually incorrect. I'm interested in that, Sia. What do you mean factually incorrect? Demand and price correlation does not make economic sense. Maybe just explain to me what you mean. Are you saying it's factually incorrect or does not make sense? And I think those two things are different things. When something doesn't make sense, does not necessarily mean it's factually incorrect. Racist comments, technical increase in price, and the demand correlation. Can just maybe indicate to us what you mean like that. The tone is unprofessional. The email also has no structure. The greeting and closing are inappropriate. The relationship between revenue and demand is not well laid out. What does he mean they're all black? Exactly that, Ntando. The employees are. There is no proper flow in the email. Wow, quite a lot. And thank you so much. So it is actually nice that you guys are able to identify the issues in this email. But some emails that are being assessed or that are responses to some of the tasks may look like this. Yes, this is an exaggerated version because it's all the issues put together, but some emails are looking like this. So maybe just to summarize, of course, the greeting looks too casual and using the SMS language might just not be welcome. It's too sarcastic. Hope you're missing our Friday night drinks, then says not. It's just not appropriate. Here it goes. Well, not full structured sentences. Revenue has been set to consistent throughout the years. Like that does not make sense. There's a grammar issue there. Maybe a word is missing. I would like to bring it to your attention if you have considered any chance of revenue to that. You see, I'm already running out of breath. Too long of a sentence that is not making sense. If demand increases, therefore prices also increase. Is it? And I like someone's comment saying there's no logic in that. So it does not make sense, meaning it lacks logic. Why did we not put the 2018, 2019, and 2020 information in a tabular format to actually make the point of that sentence that is in the middle of the paragraph? And that is what we generally refer to as the appropriate style, to actually make clarity of your expression more appropriate. And again, yes, an indication of lack of ethical leadership and also being discriminatory by being stereotypical around a particular class of a race. And yeah, so how can we tighten our controls here? As much as it's a valid question, though, it doesn't seem like I understand what was the purpose of this email. Is it just to ask for how to tighten controls? Or there's a question mark also after, I'm worried if our delivery and logistic team will cope with this. Like if I'm Sean, I wouldn't know what to respond to. Like, what is the task, or what are you asking me to do? So the other part that I spoke about, the discrimination against a particular class, that was a professional suicide, because that is an indication of lack of ethical leadership, which we do not want. And APC is more about all those ethical tasks and questions within ethical questions within some of the non-ethical tasks or non-pervasive tasks. Okay. I hope we're not going to be drafting emails that looks like this, right? Guys, can we confirm we're not going to be drafting emails like this? Fantastic. Definitely not. Fantastic. Cool. Let's look at this other situation. During the APC assessment, one of the, what just happened there on my screen? Interesting. Rendani, I'm not sure if it's on your end, but all those scribbles. I thought no scribbles can go through other than from my side. But anyway, during the APC assessment, one of the candidates' laptops did not accept the password, and it locked the candidate out following multiple attempts of login. What do you do? What attribute amongst others do you need to demonstrate to be declared competent? Emotional resilience, followed by replanning and reorganizing. That's exactly what you need to be demonstrating, emotional resilience. So how would you feel, guys, if something like this happens to you during an assessment? Should you be ready for such things? Of course. You should always be ready for the unexpected. How would you feel if you could just open your mic on, or also you could just actually just type in the chat box and indicate to me, how would you feel if something like this were to happen to you? devastated, but I will continue to write manually. I would panic, flustered, but have a plan B. Remain calm, distraught. I'll go through the most. Anxious, in a bit of a panic, but will write manually. Cry, a little distressed, overwhelmed, panic. I can share my experience. Nkomo, it looks like you've got other experiences as well. But panic, it's a stressful situation, but needs to be managed in an orderly manner. Tina shall pray. I would be so stressed, but try find a solution quick. And that is exactly what, guys, you need to do. When something unexpected happens to you in that assessment, something like this, where you've locked yourself out, even if you do panic, do not panic for more than 30 seconds. Of course, there will be that initial shock of saying, what just happened? Do not, I think one of the most important things is do not try to now start analyzing, oh my God, I'm going to fail. Oh my God, if it doesn't work out, I won't be able to write. I won't be able to finish my tasks. Do not now start anticipating what the consequences of this thing are. You are focusing your energy on the wrong things. Focus on unlocking your laptop. That is what the issue is. Just tell yourself, listen, I'm in a mess. How do I get out of this mess? The mess being, I need to get back into the laptop one way or another. Okay? Get the necessary help that you need and make sure that you are dealing only with the issue of the password and the locked laptop. Do not try to think about anything else. Once you've unlocked your laptop, or once you've made a decision that, listen, I am now making a different call, like let's say after 10 or 15 minutes, you make a call that with the assistance, obviously, of Psycha to say, I'm going to write manually and they have approved it. Then now you replan and reorganize yourself. You say, right, I've lost 15 minutes, then which tasks can I reduce maybe by 5 minutes each? Like maybe you identify 5 tasks and you reduce their time that you had allocated initially by 5 minutes each. You do not reduce one task with the whole 15 minutes that you've lost, because then you're not being fair to that particular task. That is you replanning and reorganizing. You see, then you never flustered yourself with what could happen, what will be the consequences, or I will fail, I'll do this, and I won't be able to finish. Don't think negatively. That's all I can say. Do not give up. Keep going. Everyone happy? Any question? Oh, Nkomo, you had a similar experience. Are you able to unmute and then share your experience with others? I'm happy for you to use the time to do that.
Okay, yes, I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, yes. So with the final assessment, right, in October, I had my laptop sorted out and checked a week before we actually wrote, and I was doing some practicing on it. So on the day of exam, when I had to log in, I couldn't go through. So I tried to get hold of the gentleman that was allocated to me if I had any issues with the secure exam, and we tried to sort that out, but it took me almost 30 minutes. However, to now shift my mind, from the fact that I had told myself I was going to write uh, using a computer, now I had to write manually. It took me some time because my mind was already, messed up. I was now panicking and yeah. So basically, I started writing after an hour. As a result, I didn't do better in the main exam. But again, even with the final exam, I sorted out the laptop. Really, I can't tell what has been happening with my laptop. I sorted it out, but on the day of exam, here comes, I was getting error messages. But on that day, I just told myself that whatever happened on the day that I'm writing the exam, I'm just gonna change my mind, I'm not gonna have any frustration. So the minute that I realized that the system was giving me a problem, I didn't even take time, to decide what I was going to do. It didn't even take me 5 minutes to decide. I just said, I'm going to
Yeah.
write manually. And I did so. And as a result, I came right. So, an advice to my fellow candidate is if you have an issue, you need to make a decision right there and there. Don't allow it to sort of like mess your mind and start thinking of this thing is not working. Be prepared to write manually because for the past, so many years you've been writing manually. So yeah, do not take time with that one. Make a decision and stick with it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Make a decision quick enough. Yes, do get help, like Gomo tried to get help. And if it's not working, make a decision quickly together with the people that are helping you to say, look, I can't waste a minute longer. I'm going to decide to write manually. Are you comfortable with that? Because also I'm just trying for you guys to manage the expectation on the other end. You don't want to write manually for 8 hours and then at the end they say no, something had gone wrong or whatever the case might be. So absolutely, thank you for sharing that story, Nkomo. It's quite a useful, and I like the transformation from how you experienced the issues before. You lost an hour. It's quite an hour in the APC assessment is quite a long time. And I like the fact that the second time, then you were like, no, in the second minute, you made a decision that I'm gonna write manually. And that is one thing that I like about making those decisions is you are not you are not focused on, okay, my panic, focusing on other things. All what you knew is that I'm going to write this assessment. Come high or hell water, you're going to write the assessment and you're going to complete it. That should not be an option, guys. And other areas that I usually experience in terms of talking to my candidates is that, during the assessment, I keep on asking myself, should I want to give up, or should I? They keep on thinking back and forth about the assessment, whether it's worth writing or should we call it quits at this hour because maybe they experienced something, an issue, or one of the tasks was very challenging to them. Guys, you don't have time to be doubting yourself. You are an expert. You are a responsible business leader. You make you need to be resilient and just push to the end as if there is no option. Your life depends on it. I see there are a couple of questions, like Lungile saying, should we bring an extra laptop? I guess you may, Lungile, but I guess the question is, does that extra laptop include or has a secure exam in it, or the e-writing tool? If it does, I would say, and you've got, I would say do bring. Do they provide writing pads for manual writing? That is a good question. Ribu, I'm not sure if you're still online, or or Randani, if you know about whether they do provide writing pads for manual writing. And yes, Matato, I agree with you. If you have an extra laptop, bring it. What if you wrote half of the paper and the laptop crashes? Would you, how would you handle this? The nice thing, Temba, is that the system backs up. So if it crashes, yes, you might not be able to continue, but whatever you've written will be retrieved. Don't let it be your problem. You know what happened, then you need to make a plan about the remaining part that still needs to be written. Okay, yeah, Rendani says, I believe so. They're similar to those you use for ITC. Yeah, thank you guys for that clarification, that indeed they will provide a manual pad. Let's look at another experience of a candidate. I like this one. I spent the night before, because guys, we're talking about before the assessment. I spent the night before going through last minute packs that were sent to me and printing out documents that I thought I would need for the exam. I was panic printing, which did not do much for my nerves. I ended up not being as rested as I would have liked to be. 5 days pre-release. What do you guys think of this situation? GNT says this is a lose-lose situation because you did not rest and you did not adequately prepare. Correct? This candidate did not plan. Do not take on last-minute packs. No preparation was made by the candidate. Don't print packs from others. Consolidate and make it your own. Awesome, Matatu. I love that. And we're going to talk about that. No printing should be done, I suppose, in the last minute. Reduce the anxiety. Plan of action is needed. Candidates not plan their preparation. Trust your 5-day preparation. You'll be over the place. Theory dumping. I think it is important to trust your research. Absolutely, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I think one thing that I always advocate is that you must have a plan for the 5 days. And the plan, write it down. What is the plan? What is going to be done when? As in, it's like a timetable. What is going to be done when? And you're not going to write that timetable because you're going to be wasting or eating into your 5 days. The plan must be done at this hour. As in, I hope every single one of you guys have got a timetable, or in your teams, you've got your timetable in terms of what is going to happen when. If you don't have that timetable, please get it done before Friday. Get your timetable done as to what is going to be done when. And I like what other guys are saying. Make sure that you draw the line in the sand as to when is the last time you're gonna stop accepting additional research from other people. At what point do you stop? At what point are you gonna then print? And at what point, once you've printed, because once you've printed, you still need to go through the printed version of your research. Okay, because I don't want you to be just reading it electronically and then printing it and filing it and forgetting about it. It needs to be read once it's in your file. Johan is saying, rather rest with lesser research. You already know a lot. I hope that lesser research, Johan, is not like limited research, as in not adequate research. But I agree, you need to rest as well. Okay. You've got to trust your research. We're going to talk about research just now. Okay, I guess I'm going to be taking you through the 5-day period, meaning before the day of the assessment, in terms of what are the expectation, in terms of some of the learnings and things like that. However, at this point, I just want Rendani to share with us his understanding of the APC assessment. I've shared my understanding. He's going to share it more from a process perspective, and then what you need to be demonstrating. And then I'll come back to start talking about pre-release, the day you receive it, the 5 days, and all the way until your file is perfectly printed and it's just awaiting for you to drive to the exam venue. Rendani?
Thank you, Freddy. Good evening, everyone. Just to then touch on what you were talking about, or just to formally introduce the APC, and the reason that we always think it's best to touch here, it's because it's quite important for us to make sure we are aligned in terms of what the assessment itself is attempting to do, or what are the fundamental objectives, and therefore how do you need to think about it, which then lays the right foundation for the following discussion, as well as the discussion of our day 2. So if you look at this, so the first thing that you need to just appreciate about the APC is that it's a multidisciplinary case study. And what that talks to is that, yes, we've seen integration at an ITC level, where the scenario will then have accounting in it, tax, and so on. But one of the things that you will then appreciate about real life is that things are really not separate. As much as we might be talking about an issue that might have arose from an accounting, say, irregularity, we might then need to consider things like reputation, and we might need to consider things like what is the impact from a tax perspective, and so on and so on. So fundamentally, the APC is saying that as entry-level CS, you need to appreciate that the world is multidisciplinary in nature, that when you're thinking about the issues are always integrated, and therefore, when we give you a case study, it will then be dealing with a number of issues covering different disciplines, and you'll then need to be able to bring those together to be able to form a view or to respond to the various tasks that are put before you. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that we are assessing your professional competence. And it is always quite important to then understand what it means. And this is where the 3 bubbles that Fede was just talking about actually make sense, because it is very important that you will then appreciate that even some of the people that you work with, that usually it's not the most technical person that is always on top. That's because technical competence is not the only thing that really drives success. And that's what the APC is also highlighting, that professional competence will then capture, one, yes, you do need to know the work, that's your technical competence. And then you really need to demonstrate a couple of professional skills that you will have then accumulated over time. So that is something that is what? That is something that you will need to just be mindful of, to say that it's important that when I'm responding, I do show that I know the work, but am I showing critical thinking? And I just like in that email that Fede was sharing with you, that some of you said this doesn't make sense, and that is just applying that's just applying or demonstrating professional competence, that before you assess, you do your ratio analysis and so on and so on, you need to evaluate the information before you. Does it make sense? Is it illegal? Where is the boundaries, and so on and so on? So it's quite important that when you are dealing with the task, when you are approaching or preparing for the APC, you realize that it's not just going to be how good you are in accounting, how good you are in MENEC, and so on and so on. But professional skills, the quality of your communication will also be what? Will also be considered as part of your overall outcome. And additionally, the third point is we are looking for competency at an entry level, meaning that you really need to say at the end of your program or training, the 3-year training program, entering into the workspace as a chartered accountant. What is it that is expected of you? Meaning that, yes, there will be an element of judgment. You will need to be able to consider different views, have a view that is well substantiated, but at the end of the day, most of the time, you will then be expected to be contributing to decision-making processes. And that's how, even if you go back to all the APC assessment from APC 2014, you'll then see that in your junior role, you will then be dealing with probably senior management, and your role is to provide the relevant information, the relevant thinking. And that's what is expected generally of an entry-level CA. And therefore, it means that things might not necessarily be clear-cut, as you might have seen, say in prior assessments, say CT and ITC. But here, there might be open-ended kind of thinking that you then need to bring yourself to, and be able to make the management that you're reporting to aware of such. Then the next thing, it's all the next thing then talks to problem solving in an integrated manner. So this then links to the multidisciplinary nature of the APC, to say that more than anything, you'll find that the problems that you're going to be exposed to in the tasks, they are very practical. And even more so when we start talking about the APC 2019, you will then say, oh yes, these are some of the practical issues that I've seen. And that's where the research component comes in, because you need to understand these issues that have been presented in this fictitious case study. How have real companies or similar situation been handled in practice? And you'll then find that there may be different views, but the idea is to also then bring those views together and be able to say that, all right, given this might be the right avenue that this company needs to take. This might be the core consideration that they need to consider. So you really need to be able to bring different ideas and be able to come up with solution in an integrated manner. Then the next thing is talking to the fact that the information that that you will be providing is generally used to make business decisions. And what that is talking to is that at the end of the day, you really need to see where the APC fits in. You then need to understand the case study or the company that you're dealing with, because without that, you then resort to academic responses. You then resort to which answers make more sense. What does the textbook say? Without necessarily coming back and say that if this was my business, if I was on the other side, what kind of responses will I need in order to be able to make a decision? If they ask me for other factors, if they ask me to evaluate a decision, to provide a recommendation, am I really understanding how all this information that I'm providing will lead to what? Will lead to effective and efficient business decision making. And that's one thing that really is all about when it comes to the APC, that you should not forget that these are what practical situation and the management are interested in making decisions that could really break the organization or really make or grow the organization. So it's quite important that even if you're dealing with an accounting task, you then say, okay, is there a business element that I need to be aware of? And if it's all about business, it means that my level of that technical detail is not something that I should be focusing on, but I should be focusing on how this information can then be communicated to the business leaders, to management, and they be able to use that information to make decision regarding the business. Then the last one is just about increased degree of decision making. And one of the things that you'll really need to appreciate is the fact that in APC, it's not always going to be obvious what the right outcome is. It's not always going to be a clear cut where now the positives will clearly outweigh the negatives or so on. But it's a situation where now you're saying that, all right, I'm sitting here and I don't have all the information, but am I able to consider the information that I've got in order to do what? In order to really build a logical argument. And the idea here, it's just about that in the real world, we hardly have all the information that we need. I mean, look at where we are as a country or as the world. We are now facing COVID-19, and businesses are required to make decisions about an uncertain future. And that means it's all about the quality of the information that they've got now. It's all about the analysis that goes into the forecast, the reasonability, and different elements and uncertainties that surround the companies or the various businesses. And in there, it means that decisions into territory that they've never stepped into will then be critical. So that means even when you are now stepping into the upcoming APC assessment, you really need to be mindful of that, to say that there might be tasks where they might just be open-ended. I need to probably demonstrate my understanding of the impact of COVID-19 overall. I need to understand how it has impacted different discipline, different businesses, and I need to understand that I need to make decisions without knowing what or how the upcoming year will look like. And that is that, because sometimes what makes this a bit difficult is that we are looking for whether the answer is it X or is it Y, and that's not what will be expected. That's not what will really make you to be successful in the APC, but it's just for you to embrace this uncertainty, this need to deal with information that is unstructured, the need to really be able to move or think beyond your technical understanding and so on. So this is something that this is something that you need to appreciate and make sure you are clear about when it comes to the APC. All right, so then related to that will then be what? Will then be the next slide. Fedi, can you please? Yes, thank you. So now that you've mastered, or or once you've gotten a sense of how you need to think about the APC, how you need to prepare yourself, how you need to really walk in the kind of attitude that you need to develop towards the APC, you need to understand some of these 9 realities that we have developed, or we've come to understand, and we've come to see that a lot of candidates either miss it to their peril, because you are really expecting the assessment to be something that is not. So when you look at the APC competency framework, where when you look at the APC regulations on what they're trying to achieve with the different elements of the APC and so on, you then look at what you then come to some of these realities that we've summarized on this slide. The first one it's saying, or it says what? You cannot succeed without having a clear understanding of what is being assessed. And that is what, or that is why to us, the previous slide was necessary to really clarify that, yes, technical competence had its role. It is the basis of what? It is the basis of the APC case study, but it's not what is fundamentally being tested. Professional skills are what is being tested in what? In an uncertain environment of future. So you really need to embrace that point. And that is what sometimes make it a bit tricky. That is what makes the APC a bit challenging when you compare to some of the previous assessment structures that you might have gone through. Then additionally, this then brings us to point number 2, that you cannot outstudy it. And I think it'll be quite interesting to probably also hear your views in terms of what you've been doing after the end of your professional programs, and even in this week, heading to the weekend of the pre-release. That if you think about it, sometimes you'll find that you're just sitting there. Yes, you can review some of your assessments, some of the comments that you might have gotten from your markers, but that's just about it. So it's not like your ITC, where now you'll say, today it's valuation, tomorrow it's deferred tax, and so on and so on. The APC does not offer that luxury, and therefore you cannot outstudy it. You cannot say right now that I am prepared for the APC. The preparation will only kick off once you do what? Once you get that pre-release and understand the sector, understand the issues, get the triggers, discuss with your various teams and groups, and so on and so on. That is what you are able to then put in as part of your preparation. But before that, it is all about understanding, developing some of the core professional skills that are required in order to be successful in the assessment. Then, number 3, it says that the professional skills cannot all be developed in a classroom environment. So when we talk about the professional skills, I want you to be thinking about your critical thinking. I want you to think about ethical leadership, social responsibility, your communication skills, your business acumen. That those are some of the things that we cannot get into a classroom, even if we had all the time in the world. Getting into a classroom and saying we are teaching you about business acumen, that's something that cannot be out-taught. You cannot teach someone to really be aware of business. Some of these things require you to engage with the world. It requires you to have an inquisitive mind to really understand how different business leaders are thinking about the same problem that we are facing. And I'm sure even in COVID, I think a lot of people might have probably read more articles than they ever did around the COVID-19, because sometimes you just want to understand, what is it? How does it impact the world? How does it now stop the logistics organization? How does it stop the tourism? And so you will then need to just read in terms of enhancing your understanding and just doing what? And just appreciating what is the impact of, say, COVID-19 on different businesses. And that's what we are saying, that these are not the things that can be taught in the classroom. And yes, things like communication skills, you can have a base where now you say, all right, I want to just understand how to be a good professional communicator and so on. But at the end of the day, those could probably be the guidance. You'll then need to apply these things in your daily professional environment, when you're writing, even just chatting and so on and so on. And this is what you need to appreciate. And therefore, the fact that you cannot study or study the APC, it can be lightened by the fact that you actually don't need to be worried too much, because the skills that you need can then be can then or don't need to be studied or don't need to go to a classroom or workshop to really develop them, but they're developed generally in a work environment and so on. And that's where now point number 4 comes in, to say then they are really developed over a period of time. And I think it's very important to then say that I'm hearing this thing about critical thinking. I want to really understand what it's all about. At this point, you can understand it, but what you'll then discover is that it's not something that you will then need to be doing over the next couple of days, but it's something that you can say that now I understand why the lecturers were telling me that. I understand why at work we're doing things in this particular way, because overall the program and the academic and the training, they were designed in order to help you to develop these skills over time and really get to do what? To master them. Then there's these pervasive skills that that you will see that examiners keep talking about. And if you've also gone through the APC regulations and the APC competency framework, you'll then see that SAICA is what has really flagged them to say this is important as part of what? As part of the APC assessment. And when you look closely, they will say that this includes personal values, attributes, ethics, and so on. So now when you think about them, you are now saying that, all right, will I then get a task where now I am expected to then do what? To then respond using these pervasive skills. And the idea is that no, you will not necessarily get such a task. But the idea is that you will get tasks that will test or that will have those skills being required as an underlying. So you could then have evaluation, which you need to which you need to review. In order to review evaluation, yes, you need to know your finance principles, but additionally, you need to then bring your business acumen. You need to then bring your business awareness that you then question and say, we are in COVID-19. I see that pre-COVID-19, this is where you were, and so on. And it was quite interesting. I was just reading a headline earlier today, and then they were just saying that this restaurant says that it's doing quite a lot. It's actually making about 60% more than it used to make pre-COVID-19. And it caught my attention. I was like, how is that even possible? So even before going into the issue, that's what professional skills or the pervasive skills require to do. That before you now say that you are interested in buying that business, what is the valuation? Let's now deal with this point of how are you able to achieve 60% more than what you're doing pre-COVID. Because now we are expecting that restaurants are not as full as one will expect. We are saying that most people have lost their jobs, so the pocket is a bit tight, and the cost of just managing the COVID-19 regulations and so on might also be putting pressures on your margin. So how is then that possible? So there could have been detail that talked more to that, but the fact that one is actually thinking about these things, it's what is expected of you. So you really need to bring that and remember that before you really jump to the task, how have these other things been how have these other things been considered or been thought of? So that is what the fifth bubble is all about. Then number 6 is effective communication. So you can really be super when it comes to when it comes to your technical skills. You can have good ideas about issues, but if you cannot communicate them to a stranger, the stranger being the examiner, then you run the risk of you run the risk of missing the point. You run the risk of struggling to convince that stranger that is evaluating your assessment. And sometimes it's the small things, like it's so painful when you are reviewing a script and you can see that someone has got ideas, but the sentence construction, it's just not working. The spelling errors are just all over the place. And you are now thinking that, am I giving you the benefit of the doubt? I see you are saying that we need to consider COVID-19 and its impact on the business because revenue might have been impacted. Then I'm saying that, okay, is it a matter of communication or is it a matter of critical thinking there? So it becomes very challenging that, well, what is this person then trying to do or trying to say? Are they really recognizing that maybe for this business, it was a technology company, so revenue, when they say it has been impacted, they are saying that it could be a good thing? Or are they recognizing that this business looks like this, and therefore, when they are talking about this point, they are that? So if your communication does not get there, and it is making me sit and question each and every statement, then it immediately lose confidence in me to say that maybe you just didn't understand the issue so well, and that's why you are not able to communicate effectively. And that is when just things are not clear. And imagine now if the sentence construction is also not working. Additionally, there are spelling mistakes. Now it just throws everything out the window, and it makes it difficult to really demonstrate your competence under that environment. And even when you reflect on the examiner's report for 2019, it was very concerning when the examiner said that they are worried about the decline in communication skills because people are really not paying enough attention to this, and therefore this could be some of the contributing factors why the APC 2019 performance was quite low compared to the previous assessments. So those are some of the things that one just needs to be mindful of. Then the other thing is business acumen. So business acumen, this talks to just understanding how businesses work, understanding the strategies that they follow. You will appreciate that in APC, they'll always give you enough detail to understand what the business is all about, but you will then be given an opportunity to understand its revenue model, the revenue model of its competitors, so that you are able to compare and see the effectiveness of its strategy, limitations thereof, the risks that they face, its strengths and weaknesses, and what will then help you to do, it will really enhance your response for some of the tasks involving strategy, for some of the tasks involving risk management, because you will have an intimate understanding of a business. And when you are there, you are able to even question it. And we will going to what we're going to touch on some of these things when we get to day 2, and we really rip apart the 2019 assessment, where we just look at some of the things and how these issues that we're talking about now needed to be considered. But what I just want you to understand is that you really need to demonstrate business acumen. And in doing so, you'll then need to do what? You will then need to demonstrate a general awareness of the industry. And rest assured that if you do not do or you do not have an intimate understanding of a business and probably how the likes of COVID-19 might be impacting it, then to just throw a point on COVID, it will not do what? It will not enhance the quality of your response. But you really need to demonstrate the understanding of your business and how the current economic environment is impacting or can potentially impact its future success or lack thereof. So the best way to then do this, it's really to do what? It's really to read with that critical mind, to read understanding, to read and be able to see the links to the next article, to the next All right, sorry. So here, then the point is business acumen is beyond reading articles on a regular basis, but requires engagement on issues therein. And I think this is something that was apparent when you look at some of the examiner's comments relating to Oikio's issue with that business rescue proposal. That a lot of candidates, from what they're hearing, from what the examiner is saying, he's just saying that they threw in EdCon to say that the issue was 1, 2, 3, but then they just say, yeah, this was a similar case with EdCon. EdCon did 1, 2, 3, but the lack of context meant that they didn't understand the issues. So they read the information, they understood that EdCon was being given this deal, but they didn't understand what was the core issue in that particular regard. What were the issues that potential funders, potential landlords needed to consider? And that's how you really need to be engaging with these articles to say, what am I taking away from it? And therefore, it will also help you to manage the content of your file, because you will not just say, okay, I found this company related to the one that I'm doing, article 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll then need to say, all right, what are the issues? I've now gone through 5 articles. The issue is 1, 2, 3. So have I understood the issue quite well? Do I need more articles to really expand, or this now is enough for me to file, rather than just take each and every article that might be coming my way? Then this then talk to then point 8, that the pack that you will then have put together, if SAICA if SAICA really thought that the answers are out there, they will not probably have structured the assessment like this. So you probably need to give them a benefit of the doubt that, no, there is no way where now I can just go and download information, bring them to the assessment, and I'll be considered competent. So that means the file is not meant to be It's not meant to be the source for success, but it should rather be an enhancer of the quality of your response. And that is very, very important. That the file, if you find yourself looking at the file and copying word for word, then know that you are missing the point of that file. You've missed it, because it is not meant to do that. It is not meant to have the answers. Otherwise, the entire assessment structure that doesn't make sense, and therefore we are likely to the market is likely to lose confidence in the CA designation, to say, oh no, these guys just need to do research and go copy these things into an exam and they're CAs. But you will then need to appreciate that it's not about that. So that means when you have that file, you'll then need to understand what and where is the best place to use the content in the file. And that will then help you to manage the volume that goes into the file. If you ever find yourself saying print to an entire annual report, you missed it right there. It can't be that the entire annual report is useful. It can't be. So those are some of the things that you really need to do, that you really need to think about. Then the last one is to say technical competence, necessary. And as Fedi has already highlighted, it is what? It is not an assessment of technical competence, but technical competence is the base of the assessment. You cannot go in without knowing valuation and say, hey, at least this is not an assessment of technical competence. And you then expect to handle tasks related to valuation. It doesn't work that way. You need to have the technical competence, but this is not what we are focused on developing here. Here, that's why you get the case study and you've got the triggers so that you can refresh, so that you can update your knowledge, so that you can do what? You can obtain knowledge if there's something that was not covered in your previous studies. But it can never be what? It can never be that technical competence is not relevant or is not important. And at the same time, the task itself or the task themselves are what? Are not technical in nature. And if you've gone through the examiner's report, you will see the concern the examiners had to say that some candidates are still treating this as ITC, dumping the theory and then going through the application. And you might then say, where have you seen that been done? How many articles have you read? And they will then be mentioning things like Goodwill. Did they have to then say, Goodwill is covered in IFRS 3 and IFRS 3 says you do this by the acquisition method and so on and so on. No, you don't see that. And as a result, you should then not expect that such responses will then get you to what? To a positive outcome. So those are some of the realities of the APC that we'll just want you to be what? To really be aware of in your final preparations towards the pre-release. So that those are the things that I wanted to just share with you. Are there any questions before I hand it back to Fedi? I see a chat. I do not think the file is useful. It's just adding more stress and decrease the quality of the response. Is it advisable to go to the examination without a file? Interesting question. So the one probably needs to just think about what one needs to have in the file. In some cases, because you only have 5 days, you will be going through quite a lot of information in that 5 days. Information that you will probably discover on your own and information that you'll probably be sharing with your team. So the idea of a file is just to say that, all right, I've gone through the information. I've discovered that there are these articles, there are these issues that I have seen. I think they are very good. There's 7 of them. And I'm afraid that under pressure, I might forget or might not recall all of them. So I will then keep the content as a quick refresher to say that, okay, if I get, say, a risk question there, maybe I'll be remembering 3, but if I then look, I was like, oh yes, this one, is it applicable here? Yes, it actually is, but no, this one is not. So I'm not just taking, but I'm actually using it as a trigger of some of the issues that I've seen. So that could be that could be very helpful in that regard. So for me, it's just a matter of how do you use it, rather than and how do you use it talks to what do you have in there. And the best way, or the best, probably the most ideal thing to consider is you have to know everything that's in there, and it's just then a matter of what, of using it as a reference point. So Edith is saying, yes, go with the file as a backup of information. That could work. And I think that's what I was trying to just get to. Thank you. Make a file that suits your need, but now I'm taking my file with, okay? You should be familiar with the information that is in the file. Thank you very much. And that was the point that I was trying to get to. The problem with most is that it's either with your group, someone did a particular trigger, you didn't even touch it. Then they say that this is the information on trigger number 1, information trigger number 2. You then say, I didn't have time, so slot it in. And now you are under pressure and you're saying that, do I now read and consider the information, or do I just copy quickly because this question wants risk and that there are 5 risks here. Let me just copy them down and thank you very much for the file, but you've missed the point in that regard. Then rather go with the file and not open it than go without and remember something you need in your file and it's not there. Good point as well. Yes, and I think for some that's just that a comfort, a level of what it provides that level of comfort to say at least I will not stuck if these things are required, I can use that as a reference. But some, they're able to go through that information quickly and be able to retain it and come and say, what are what were the things that was considered in this particular business proposal? Yes, I remember so considered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are these things relevant? I see this. How did they handle that? Then, if you use it as that kind of backup or comfort, then that works quite well. Then there's the legendary London Pack. London Pack, I've seen it. I thought in some cases it was probably overly dramatic. There was quite a lot of things that were in there that I doubt, but at the time that it comes out after the pre-release, before the exam, that one will then have enough time to absorb that information. And also, then how do you bring it and align it to the work that you've done? It's really important to really then believe in self here. To say, I like the fact that when Fede was asking you, are you ready to take this responsibility? You were quick to say you are ready. And what that will then mean is that you need to take ownership of your own development. You need to take ownership of the work that you've put in. So it should not be a matter of, even in practice, you don't do a work and someone says, they've done a work they didn't know you've done. You say, no, I'll go with this one, without even seeing their work, or without presenting your work or assessing your work against what they've done. And therefore, for me, it's very important that if you are going to use the London Pack, how does it supplement what you've done or really challenge what you've done? But it should not be a matter of if you have done and you spent 2 good days on something, then now you're saying that, no, I didn't even think about this. Now let me take all this and disregard what I've done. Then you need to apply theory or research to the pre-release info and summarize key issues. CVO's point, yes. What helped me is that I pretended on the day that I did not have a file. That's also good. And as we were saying, that it's more of what? A backup. How do I polish my business acumen during the pre-release period, and how do I ensure that it always comes forth in my responses? So the response part, we will talk about in day 2. So I'll just share the material with you tomorrow so that you can at least go through it and then start thinking about some of the things in there. Then during the pre-release, it's all about understanding the sector, taking the time probably to download. You don't even need to go to all the listed companies. Let's say you get a company that is in the, let's say what? That is in FMCG. So you could then download what? You could then download and spend time with Tiger Brands as financials with Pioneer Food still listed or Premier. Then you could then get those, and you can find that at the end of the day, if they're all in the same sector, it is more likely that they're facing the same issues. It will just be a matter of the strategies that they've put in place. So you might find that probably the CAFO, the CEO's note are more aligned in terms of talking about the general information, and therefore in developing your business acumen, you can say, what is the starting point, or this is the company, and whatever issues are coming out, you then go and start developing them. And that will help you to just understand a business and how it works, especially in a particular environment. Aim to have small synthesized file with your summaries. Good point. And I think that talks to your own work. The London Pack destroyed my life. I'm sorry to hear that, Atara. So yeah, sorry to hear that. So I hope now the strategy will be quite clear. Agreed, yeah. And then the pre-release goes into the file, am I right? Yes, you are expected to bring your own pre-release. I think that's what I read somewhere, but I think someone can quickly confirm. London PEC must be read with professional skepticism. It helps broaden things you may not have seen. How do you incorporate pre-release info and IOD in the exam? It's a bit too much given the limited time. Johns, we're going to speak about that on day 2. I agree, the London PEC is dramatic. I will not use any PECs. The key is to be confident in your own research. Good point. London PEC is okay if you use as backup. And any other information, so it's not limited to the London PEC. Even the information or the research from your colleagues, your friends, and so on. Those are always going to be helpful, but to the extent that they are what? They are more of a confirmation or more of challenging your own work. But if you're saying that I want to use, say, LS material in order to just study from it, you are again missing the point of the pre-release. You have not done your own work. It means that everything you are picking from a file, it's then going to be what you're sealing. But if you have already done your own work, then it could potentially make sure that you break through your own ceiling. So always think about what? Think about how you're going to use the London PEC and any other information that may be coming from what? Your colleagues. So yes, Fedi has confirmed pre-release must be part of the file. Thank you, Fedi. So yes, so I think we are all we're touching on some of the issues that Fedi is gonna expand on, especially just around how to go through the pre-release and how to then manage those triggers, because I think that's something that is quite important. And I think also the questions that you've been raising around how do you use other people's work, including the London PEC, he will expand and share his views on that. All right, I think that's everything. If there's anything else, I'll just pick it up via chat as Fedi continues. Yes. All right, yes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. You just on the emphasis that you kept on making that you cannot outstudy the APC assessment.
Yes.
And it's a very tricky time now because you feel guilty for doing nothing. At the same time, you feel like you don't really know what you need to do because you can literally go through the whole syllabus that you've studied from CTA, ITC. So now you just rest.
Yes, so resting sounds like the appropriate one. So, but what you can do as a starting point is to just then say, let's say, yeah, you were with us, and I'm sure some of the other participants were maybe with different programs and so on. So the starting point for me will be to say that, all right, yes, you might have gotten a certificate from your professional provider, but in your assessments, you might have then gotten, say, 4 Cs, 2 BCs, and maybe 2 LCs or something like that. Then for me is to say that, why did you get an LC? What did you miss? What needs to be addressed? What do you need to be more aware of going into the actual APC? Because these are what professional skills. So whatever you got a C on, it's not something that maybe you studied so well and therefore you knew, but it is because you demonstrated some set of skills. So you can then say, all right, the LCs and the BC I'm worried about. Let me understand what I missed in this regard. So yes, I see the indicators I've got. I see the indicators that were in the official marking grid. How were they not fail, or how were they not apparent to me during the assessment? Am I having gaps in how I interact or engage with the pre-release, the IOD? Is it a matter of time, maybe, given the time I could have then mastered? Is there something that was evident that the markers raised to me and that I need to address? Because a marker could say that, no, I could not give you credit for these points because you did not consider 1, 2, 3. then you are saying that, oh, that means my issue is that I'm thinking about things to this particular point. Then that could be a starting point for me. But you are really challenging your way of thinking rather than the content of that particular case study that you're looking at. Then for the ones that you managed to get a C on, you are saying that what is it that I demonstrated that the marker actually liked? Oh, you are saying that I was detailed. You are saying that I did cover a lot of issues. I did 1, 2, 3. So this might be some of the things that I need to be mindful of and do more of. And it's just more of reinforcing, entrenching the skills that you have already demonstrated and built over the last couple of months. So that to me will be the most important thing to do.
All right, no, thank you.
Yes. And I think even now, because as I said, in the next session, we're going to cover APC 2019. It could mean that maybe tomorrow or tonight, if you're still feeling energetic, it might be that let me go through the APC 2019. It could be that I need to write it, or maybe I've already written it before, and now going through the examiner's comment, just understanding why will this response be an HC? How do I get here? And why will this be an LC? And how do I avoid this one? To me, it's all about that. It's all about that kind of thinking to say, and you'll then appreciate, even in the work environment, you develop this way. You get reviews, and you then know, oh, all right, this doesn't work on this. And you don't now say that this review means that it's applicable throughout. It's just the way of thinking and how to deal with that review might be just specific to the task, but it might underlie a particular skill that needs to be addressed.
Okay, noted, thanks.
Right. Then additionally, Fed is saying that rest and keep up to date with the latest developments. So yes, that's quite important. So, and this is just general reading. Then when you get to when you get to the pre-release, then you focus and your reading is directed to somewhere else.
Hi, Randani.
Good evening.
Yes, I just want to ask you relating to number 6, effective communication skills are critical in articulating your thoughts. So I just want to understand this part. I mean, from as a Black person, am I expected to articulate myself the same way as a white person would articulate their points? Why am I asking this is because
yes.
the pass rate from the Black side is decreasing. So we need to understand whether it's an issue of technicality or it's just an issue of communication, because that will help us a lot to see where exactly are we going wrong.
To be honest, from my experience, those 9 realities actually talk to some of the issues that impact success. And this is something that we've also saw in our own program, things that we also see at an ITC level. And in some cases, as these professional skills that are required, that CICAS is saying are important, they really go beyond any particular racial group. I mean, critical thinking, even if you just read some of these articles out there, you'll just find that how business leaders think about business, which business is successful and not successful, then you will see that almost at the end of the day, whether it's something that is run, say, by a white person or a Black person, you might find that at the end of the day, they're exposed to similar issues. And how people respond could just then be a matter of experience, could be a matter of a gut feel, could be a matter of the kind of information that they've got. And I think that that's something that also happens in the APC, to say that yes, communication does go a long way in undermining one's responses. That could be something that is considered, but then the question is, at what point? Is it at a point of just articulating? Is it at a point of dealing with the pre-release information? Is it at a point of dealing with the IOD? Because it could be, Themba, that you are sitting here and you probably have excellent writing skills. But when we talk about communication skill, will be your ability to really read or critically read information that's before you. That by the time you write, all your points, I could understand them so well. And I could probably think that you might have done first language English when I'm going through it. But then it could be that you might have lacked other skills that were also quite important. So really, I think that the exercise of why there is a big difference between the racial group is something that I believe that it's something that Psych has been looking into it, and just to really understand if really it's limited to just communication, or there might be other factors. But from my view, yes, yeah.
Yeah, because I just wanted to say, to understand from your takeaways and experience through engagement with you as fellow Blacks, like what exactly are we missing? Is it the technicality? Where is exactly the red flag where we need to actually be at the point where we say we can increase the pass rate of Blacks? So that's why I'm asking this question, because if we are put, like you were giving an example, in most likely we go through the same process. I mean, after going through the same process and you ask me about depreciation, I would expect that racially must not play a big role. But maybe because the way I'm responding or the way I'm explaining myself, expressing that depreciation explanation to someone is not articulating properly. So, but I would expect the technicality around that both of them, they will know that there's a depreciation methods and this is how they should go about the depreciation of assets and all that. I'm just making an example. So that's why I'm asking this question, like where exactly should we start taking courses for skills writing, or is it, should we enhance more on technicality? Where exactly are we missing the point?
So yeah, and I think I get where you're coming from. And I think even from our side, that was one of the most challenging questions. We did attribute quite a lot to quite a lot of the issues to communication as a start, as one of the factors. And in our program, we then incorporated a professional or a business writing module or phase, where now the focus was just on that, how to articulate oneself, how to really write professional communication, how to construct sentences in a more, say, formal way, but and also in a way that one will have critically thought about it. Because I think when you reflect on probably the difference between first language and second language, you'll then see that the way that first language is critical of the language, it's something that is also expected as professionals to really be critical of the information that is given. And that goes a long way in terms of just what? In terms of how to really articulate one's point. But I would like to hear Fedi's views on this as well, just to add or to just share his views in that regard.
Thanks, Rendani. And I guess the question really is, what do we attribute the declining pass rates to? And like Rendani said, absolutely correct. One of the issues is effective communication from a transformation perspective. Some of our counterparts are still struggling with effective communication. And I mean, this is not strange to APC assessment. We do know this all the way from foundation phase up until we get to APC and also post qualification. I mean, there are other factors we should not discount. Business acumen, which Rendani spoke quite a lot about when he dealt with number 7, and quite frankly, I always attribute that to lack of exposure to really practical businesses. We are not as involved in businesses as our white Indian colleagues, because they grow up in the business, running the business, or helping the family to run the business, or seeing other businesses of mates, of what does your dad do, what does your mom do, those type of challenges we still experience. At a technical level, you could attribute it to other elements. I mean, it could go back to just studying in a language that is different to the language that you grew up speaking. So it makes the technical work a little bit more complicated. You've got to get your mindset into the language translation first before you get it technically correct. So the number of items that one could attribute the disparity in the pass rates between different racial groups. But I guess what I would like to do, Rendani, I'm not sure if you've got last comments. I would like to give the team about 4 minutes stretch so that we come back, so that we don't run out of time, because I still see a couple of questions in the chat box that I would like to answer as part and parcel of going through the pre-release. Rendani, I'm not sure if you've got any other final comments before we take like a stretch break. People could go to the loo.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Fedi. Temba, are you cleared?
No, thanks, Rendani and Fedi. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Temba.
Yeah,
yes.
Cool.
Thank you, Fedi.
Thanks, Temba. And I think those are some of the issues that as a profession, we're still trying to address. All right, team, shall we take, let's make it 5 minutes, and we're back at 2 minutes past 8, and then we continue from there. 2 minutes past 8, we're back.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Matabelo. Right, I just want to then step into the shoes of a potential or of a candidate to say, right, let's say it's now the 12th of December, 2020, and then we receive the pre-release information. What then? I mean, we spoke about, Renani dealt a lot with how to deal with the next couple of days before the pre-release in terms of revisiting some of your LC and BC outcomes, to just go and re-look at what went wrong there, come up with a game plan to say how not to repeat those type of issues. I spoke to the fact that you've got to keep up to date with the latest happenings in the world, globally, in different industries in the country and the likes. Matatu even asked the question as to when does the setting happen? And then I indicated that, well, I didn't indicate, but I guess the setting of APC actually starts after the release of the results of the previous year's assessment. Then the APC starts the setting process. So now, but remember, one thing you should always remember is the fact that there is no such thing as an outdated response. So what do I mean by that? So back to Matatu's question as to when do they set so that we know what is the latest development. Remember, the case studies are not time specific, meaning it's not like they expire or the new information does not come to light. So for instance, if the case study was set pre-COVID, but now you write it under COVID, your response needs to reflect the current time. So you can't say, well, it was set before the specimen solution will not have COVID, unless obviously they do say do not consider the effects of COVID. But if not, you've got to take them into account. So it doesn't matter. It's like they will keep on updating their specimen solution until the day you guys write, until the 17th. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. Okay. Right, so managing the triggers. 12th of December, and then you receive the pre-release information. What do? Obviously, you read, and you read to understand. That is the most important thing, is that, guys, make sure that you understand the entire pre-release information. Do not only select parts of it and say, I will understand page 1 to 5 because my other fellow team members will read page 5 to 13 or whatever the case might be, and I'll listen in our meeting as to what they are sharing as what they understand about the case study. Guys, as much as this is a team effort, you, in an individual level, you carry the responsibility of actually having to make sure that you fully understand everything. Okay, so you've got to really understand, and part and parcel of understanding comes with your process. You can't be in that morning of the pre-release information, you can't be having meetings, you need to have cleared out everything. All the distractions must have been cleared out so that you just focus on this pre-release information. You need to read every single sentence and understand the story about the case study. You need to fully comprehend the story and the drama that is happening. If there's a word you are reading and there's a word that just challenges you and you don't really understand what needs to, what it means, you've got to Google it or open a dictionary and find out what it means so that that whole sentence makes complete sense. So that by the end of finishing the reading of the pre-release information, you fully understand and have comprehended the pre-release information. And like other people, you've got to read it more than once just to really make sense of the whole story. I was just reading Bond's comment in the chat box. I thought it was a question around the pre-release information. Then the other part of the preparation is identifying triggers. So team, you've got to identify the triggers in the case. And triggers do not mean they start from a certain page of the pre-release. Triggers are all over the pre-release information. As in from page 1, you might identify a trigger. So the triggers, don't think maybe the background information, for instance, does not have triggers. No, triggers are things that require you to go and research or update your understanding or do something about it. So you identify all the positive triggers that they are actually saying, beware that we might be asking you a question later, or you need to fully understand this area. It be business risks of the company, it be the strategy of the company, it be a technical element. You've got to actually identify all the triggers. Okay, there is a question there that says, what is a positive and what is a negative trigger? Quite a very good question. And I'm going to actually just use one of Syca's previous assessment case study, just to demonstrate to you what do I mean by a trigger, positive or negative. I'm opening. Someone mute. Okay, this is one of Syca's. I'm gonna stop sharing this and share the pre-release. No, not that. There we go. Share. This was it 2017 or 2018? I think it was 2018. Randani, just correct me. The Metagog case study, it was the 20, was it 17? 17,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
2017. Okay. And I just want to demonstrate to the candidates that you see what I was doing when I was going through their case study and the pre-release information. I was actually just highlighting and making notes about what they're saying and asking myself some questions so that I find clarity, or highlighting what I think are triggers and what I think are negative triggers. And I mean, for instance, in this case, they were talking a lot about revenue sharing agreements. And because they were talking a lot about revenue sharing agreements, I started to wonder, how are revenue sharing agreements going to be accounted? So already that for me is a trigger, because it means I need to be a subject area expert in dealing, and I like, and you've got to underline my word, dealing with a revenue sharing agreement. So for me, that is a positive trigger, because they're talking about it. It means they want me to know a lot about revenue sharing agreements. So that is what I call a positive trigger. Okay, so things that they want you to know about. Then we had a negative trigger. I'm just trying to look for a negative trigger. There was a negative trigger here, just so that I can also illustrate what a negative trigger is. But basically what a negative trigger is to say, it's to say, do not worry about something. We might be talking about it. We might be talking about something, but do not worry about something, because it's either someone is dealing with it or whatever the case might be. So for instance, here they said, Metagog and its local partners are conducting an enterprise for VAT purposes. So in this case study, the case study was providing education. It's like the organization Metagog is providing education based using online platform. And I know just from my technical knowledge that education is an exempt supply from a vet purpose, from a vet perspective. Because education is an exempt supply. So I was actually, before I read this statement, I was thinking potentially what is happening is that from a vet perspective, this will not attract vets because it's a provision of education, which is an exempt supply in terms of Section 12H of the Value Added Tax Act. However, the moment now that they say, oh, Metagog and its partners are conducting an enterprise, they are telling me that it's an enterprise, meaning Section 12H does not apply. Section 12H does not apply, meaning they are negatively triggering 12H, meaning you don't have to go and worry about 12H applying and saying to you, they are providing education services and the vet will be exempt. Meaning in this case, vet is triggered, and exempt supply of vet for education purposes is negatively triggered, meaning do not worry about the fact that it is education which might be exempt supply, because it is not an exempt supply, because it's an enterprise. So do you see, in reading, you've got to really understand what is positively triggered to say, this is a trigger, okay? As in, I've got to do work on, but this is not a trigger, meaning it's a negative trigger, meaning I can actually ignore. Because I knew 12H, which I would have spent a bit of time on it, in this case, I won't, because it's irrelevant to the situation because it's an enterprise. So the negative triggers are the ones that will be irrelevant to the case. Hope that makes or clarifies the situation, the question. Okay. Okay, fantastic. Confirmed. Right, so back to my presentation. What I was talking about is the fact that then now you identify all the triggers. There was another question.
I just take all his bullshit about how I'm a certain result.
How many triggers plus or minus is there usually in the pre-release? Unfortunately, no one can tell. It's actually also dependent, Zeska, on how you identify your triggers. Okay, so some candidates will have a single trigger that has got subcomponents of triggers, whereas others will separate their triggers. Okay, so I mean, the number of triggers does not really matter to me, but there will be a handful of triggers. And then once you identify the triggers, you document them. You document them. You list all of them. And guys, this understanding and identifying a trigger is an individual work, meaning you're doing it on your own. You're doing those things on your own. And you'll see why I'm saying that. It's because you need to come up with an action list. For every single trigger, there must be an action point, and which is this next slide. This is this slide that is coming through. And I'm going to go back to the previous slide. So you list the triggers. You see, this is the table that will say, okay, what is trigger number 1, trigger number 2, all the way to 5. I mean, the sky doesn't mean I only will identify 5 triggers, but this is just for demonstration. One thing that is quite important to demonstrate your integrated thinking is for every single trigger, make sure that you think about the areas. As what am I talking about when I'm talking area? I'm talking a discipline or enabling competency or a professional value or attitude. So from a technical perspective, obviously you will say, is it an accounting that is being triggered? Is it a tax? Is it an audit? Is it a strategy, risk management and governance? Is it a management accounting from a management decision-making and control? Or is it financial management? Or is it a pervasive skill? Meaning, is it an enabling competency? Are they triggering something around citizenship? Are they triggering something around ethical leadership? Are they triggering something around business acumen or anything of that? Like, identify the area. And the reason I'm talking back to integrated thinking is the fact that a trigger you must always unpack your trigger in such a way you are able to identify different areas that might be applicable to that trigger. I like using the Goodwill example, which was triggered in the previous assessment. When they said, you would have seen that they've triggered Goodwill in that case study. Now, Goodwill, which area is Goodwill? Meaning, which subject area is Goodwill when we're talking about triggering Goodwill? And you needed to have considered Goodwill in a number of areas. What areas did you guys think about? Come on, put it through the chat box. Financial accounting, absolutely. I see auditing, absolutely. I'll talk to them. Tax, absolutely. Anything else? Strategy, of course. What else? It could be all of them. IS 36, which is accounting. What about financial management, mergers and acquisition, work? Yes, all of these areas could form part of the trigger. So you need to actually expand your horizon. So if they've triggered Goodwill, and in that case, I think they triggered impairment of Goodwill. Obviously, an impairment is an accounting concept. So you would have thought about, from an accounting perspective, how does IS 36 deal with Goodwill impairment? How am I accounting for it? How am I presenting it from an IS 1 perspective? And also, probably it's a key judgment area because an impairment is not a simple thing. There's key judgment, which you think about from an IS 1 and disclosing key areas of judgments and uncertainty. Accounting. And all the disclosure that go with Goodwill impairment. Who is the, who did you use to actually value the business? How did you come to the impairment? That takes me to financial management to say, oh yes, for the Goodwill impairment to come about, there needs to have been a valuation of a cash generating unit, for instance. Who would have valued this? How would they have performed the valuation? Which valuation technique did they use? What was the process that was undertaken to actually value? What were the key inputs that were used in the valuation? Again, now talking key inputs, it takes me back to accounting to say, from an IFRS 13 perspective, because I'm talking key inputs, are these key inputs observable or non-observable? And from an IFRS 13 perspective, which level would we disclose or categorize this fair value under? Is it a level 1? From a fair value hierarchy perspective, is it a level 2? Meaning Is it using observable inputs to evaluation technique, or most of the inputs, especially the ones that are significant to the valuation, are they unobservable? And it will be level 3. So I'm jumping between accounting and financial management. Someone is saying, but we're using a specialist. Okay. What about how would it be audited? Okay. Use of an expert from an audit perspective. Okay, so then I need to think about the relevant ISA from ISA 610 all the way to 620. Okay, but also, how would I audit a goodwill calculation, for instance? And a goodwill calculation, goodwill impairment calculation, and accounting of the goodwill. How would I audit those parameters? Why would a goodwill arise in the first place? There would have been a merger and acquisition. Strategy, risk management, and governance. Why would they enter into a merger or an acquisition? Why are they not going through an organic growth? Are they not implementing an organic growth strategy? Where are they adding on with acquisitions? So that is strategy. Maybe they are trying to manage a particular risk. What about if you impair goodwill? Is there an impact on your taxable income? What is the tax implication on this goodwill calculation? There might not be, because it might be a permanent difference. But it being a permanent difference, because it's not deductible by the receiver of revenue, then it means my tax rate reconciliation will have a reconciling item called an impairment of goodwill, for instance. So those, you see, I'm broadening my trigger. I've identified a single trigger, but a number of areas are popping into my head. And I'm just wanting to read other guys' stuff that I didn't get to. I think I've dealt with everything, including the work determination in your fair value calculation, use of specialists, I see, ethics, management doing the right thing to impair when supposed to and disclose as required. Okay. Will this lecture be available for us to rewatch? Absolutely. Yeah. So you see, I'm actually integrating my technical acumen and also with the business acumen from a strategy perspective. Okay, so I'm pulling everything together. Then I've identified that goodwill. Then I need to goodwill impairment as a trigger. Then I've aligned up the different areas that I need to work through to make sure that I've dealt fully with that trigger. And then now, what must happen? I've identified the areas, I've identified the trigger. What action point must be taken? Meaning, should I leave it there? Should I do a detailed research on valuation of businesses or cash generating units? Okay. Or should I just do a brush up, meaning update my understanding? Maybe because I work at a corporate finance of a particular audit firm and valuing a cash generating unit is my daily job. I might not have to go and do a detailed research going back to my ITC slides and notes. I might just need to update my understanding. But I might be an auditor that is auditing, usually auditing inventory, stock counts, and accounting payroll, meaning I actually forgot about how to value a cash generating unit and also how to account for it and how to audit it. Then I might have to do a detailed research and obtaining an understanding. Do you see then now an action plan is going to be completely different for every single one of us because it's very individual specific. It's very, very individual specific. It's quite interesting that Bonds is saying, I don't think 5 days is enough though. This going concern trigger already needs 3 days. Not really, hey Bonds. You know, one interesting thing I always said to my friends when I used to be in your position, and not that I wrote this assessment, but when I used to study, I used to say, give me 10 days to prepare for an exam. I'll use all 10 days. Give me 4 days. I'll still be equally ready. It's because now that you've got 4 days, you know you've got to give each and every element a little bit less time than you would have had to allocate had you had 10 days. So it is definitely doable. So you just need to allocate that little time accordingly. So Bonds, and I said, I'll go back to the previous slide, is because I wanted to show that the 3 circles are an individual work. So you understand the pre-release, you identify the triggers, both positive and negative, because the negative, I won't have to do anything on them because they're saying, probably don't worry. The positive are the ones that I am going to do something with. And then I put together an action plan. So that table is quite useful. And then at the end of that, which probably will take you or must take you estimated, remember you haven't done any research, but you've just come up with the action plan. That will probably take you that morning of the pre-release day. And only then will it be pay your timetable time to meet up with your team. Only then, once you've finished your individual work, you meet with your team, because the meeting with your team is just to go and challenge your understanding. As people are discussing the case, then they're going to reaffirming that you understand it the same way, or you guys are having differences, and that you use the discussion to actually clarify your own understanding. You compare notes on your triggers to say, these are my triggers, just to make sure that you've got a complete list of the positive triggers, meaning you didn't miss any trigger. Do you see? You use it as a completeness check and accuracy of your trigger list. But you can't be comparing an action list because everyone has got a separate or a completely different action list because it depends on where they stand. Someone says, I agree, Fedi. I just want to get to the comment. The action plan is really a personalized thing. Yes. Any advice about doing focused research? Okay, we'll get to research in a bit on identified triggers in the context of the company in the pre-release. We'll talk about that tenacious just now, because that is part of the team now. You're no longer on your own. Say, for instance, if IFRS 15 is not my strong suit, do you suggest I go back to my CTAA notes and study the entire standard? Whoa, it might just not be possible, like Bongs was saying, to study the entire standard. But Vanessa is to focus what has been triggered. For instance, in Metagog, they had triggered IFRS 15 from a revenue sharing. Revenue sharing. How is revenue being shared between parties that actually render a service? I might start thinking about the fact that, okay, do we divide it into 2, half? Do you get 90%, I get 10%? Oh, it sounds like I'm getting a commission if I'm getting only 10% and you're getting 90%. Am I in an agency principal relationship here? Okay, so then now it's that narrowing me down specifically to the principal agent consideration within IFRS 15, and that is what I need to go and research. Vanessa, I hope I'm answering your question there. Zippo, I think that would have to focus on what is being triggered. For example, if modification is triggered, it could be inefficient to go through all 5 steps. Absolutely, absolutely, Zizipo. Then now, guys, remember, and I like I said, you needed to have a plan before the pre-release. So I demonstrated that understanding, identifying triggers and documenting them, and documenting the areas and the action plan, that is an individual work that will naturally take you the entire morning of the 12th of December. But you already have a timetable that indicates what time you are meeting with your team on that day. Okay, it's in everyone's calendar. Okay, it's not like that morning we will be like, okay, guys, we're going through the pre-release on our own. What time should we meet? Like, you cannot be talking about logistics on the day of the pre-release. The timetable must be set. Everyone's calendar is clear, and it must be clearly stipulated. We're meeting from 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock, or 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and you need to stick to that time. You're not going to get there and it becomes a talk show where everyone wants to say something. It needs to be very purposeful, as in the meeting must have a chair who understands exactly, and doesn't mean it's the same chair for all the meetings, but for a particular meeting, who is chairing us and what is the objective? Like I said, is it just to make sure everyone understands the case the way they do? How much time are we going to spend on just understanding? How much time are we going to spend comparing triggers? How much time are we going to spend allocating responsibility as to who's going to go and research what? It needs to be very purposeful, the meeting. You need to walk out of that meeting knowing that, yeah, me and my team, we are on the roll. We stuck to the time. It was not a talk show. We've got action plans out of that. Everyone knows what they need to go and do. So guys, a meeting longer than 3 hours after 3 hours, it becomes fruitless. I'm just putting it out there. Okay. And one other thing that I want to talk about is, then you walk out of the meeting. And another thing that maybe other people should start considering is about going into the meeting. Another thing that I like is people must share. Why not share your table? I mean, everyone, let's say, would have done this. I mean, people will not really be interested in your own action plan, but the triggers and the area, why don't we share that before the meeting? At a particular time, maybe 2 hours before the meeting, just to make sure that everyone does the check on their own. I mean, I hate going to a meeting where then now they're like, okay, Rendani, present or show us your triggers. Then I quickly go through Rendani's 17 triggers. Then I'm like, oh, okay. I had missed 2. And then we ask Ere, show us your triggers. Ere, project her triggers. And then I see, oh, Ere, I've got everything. Like, I mean, I feel like that is doing the work together, but like it's not necessary. If we had shared, we would have walked into that meeting knowing exactly, like I would have checked how many triggers Ere had, which ones did I identify and she didn't identify, and the other way. And then I would have commented and said, oh, these are the 3 triggers I had missed. Thank you, Ere, for identifying them. Rendani, I think you've missed this. Like it becomes very concise and purposeful meeting, rather than having to redo the process when we are all together and it's like 6 of us, and everyone wants to say something. But that is another consideration. I'm just sharing ideas here. Then the meeting happens, we stick to the time, 3 hours maximum. and then we walk out of there. When we walk out of there, remember, you walk out of there knowing who's going to be researching which trigger. And I think best practice, some people are saying it's better to have more than one person researching a trigger. Absolutely agree. Just in case one drops the ball. Or also it is being used as a sense check to say, are we not forgetting anything? In addition, if then now you come out of the meeting knowing who's doing what, and when you need to go back to your individual, to yourself as an individual, you need to go and say, right, they've allocated the goodwill impairment trigger to Rendani and Aaron and not me, which is fine. I mean, it's part of the teamwork, but I'm horrible in goodwill impairment. I still remember back when I did it in CTA and ITC, I used to get like 30% because it used to not be my strong area. Do I leave it to Rendani and Ere on their own? Absolutely not. Because it's an area that I'm not comfortable with. I've got to do some groundwork on it. Even though I know Rendani and Ere are going to do a fantastic job because they work in corporate finance and that is their strong area, and I'm going to learn a lot from them in 2 days' time when they share their research. But I know my weakness. I don't really understand it. Meaning, if you don't know what Rendani and Ere are going to bring to the table, then you've got to do something. At least you need to have an expectation. You need to build yourself. You need to research, do a light touch research to be like, oh, what is goodwill impairment about again? What is I-36 saying? Okay. So that you start knowing exactly what is Rendani and Ere going to be sharing. Yes, their research is going to be fantastic, but it will be shared on day 2 or 3. At that time, it must not be completely new information. I need to start building myself around the area whilst I'm researching the areas that I've been allocated because I'm strong in. Remember, usually you guys allocate triggers to the people that are stronger in those areas, which is not, it's useful to the team, but it's not useful to you because, I mean, you could have actually walked into the assessment on that area without even having to research it because you are fantastic at it. So that's why I'm saying this action plan is an individual thing. So as much as you're going to wait for Rendani and Ere to bring those things on what they're good at, you've got to have a light touch on the areas that you are not comfortable with, all of them. Okay, let me just start answering some of the questions in the chat box. Let's see. Let's see. I really love the table to prepare for the meeting. I would add the page or document number. Fantastic. I like that down. Mark where I can link or integrate a trigger with various triggers where applicable and use this as a checklist to manage my time during the 5-day. Thank you. Absolutely agree. Lungile, thank you. Taking away so much tonight. I like the fact that you are. Where else? Any advice for those in groups where it's not possible to have more than one person on each trigger? That is also fine, Kumo. You can allocate one, only one person to a trigger, which is actually fine. But then you, on an individual level, I think you should do a backup plan to just do a light touch research on all the other triggers that you're not allocated, just in case something goes wrong, okay? Or you can actually have a primary person and then just say, there must be a secondary person who's gonna just spend a few hours fewer hours as a secondary, just to manage any mishaps that people could disappoint you on. Matatu, we all researching triggers in my group. Fantastic. Would you recommend not splitting the triggers? Absolutely team dependent. How big is the size of the team and all those, Lindo? But I'm a proponent of splitting the triggers, but not as much. Like I can't have 20 triggers and only be focusing or researching 3 or 4 triggers. That is a waste of my time. I need to be researching at least close to half of the triggers, just so that I'm covered, like I've got coverage of all the triggers, but also take into account that I might not finish, and that's where the value of teamwork comes in. I know other people will help me out on other areas, because I want it by the time that people start sharing their information that I've really covered a lot already. Okay, and then I'm just closing other gaps of the researches or the triggers that I didn't research. But it can't be, I mean, imagine 20 triggers and you've focused your full 2 days on 3, and then information start coming on 17, you are doomed. We don't split, so we all get a chance to challenge each other. I like that, Matatu. Is it necessary to, okay, I answered that. Is sharing not gonna make you lazy to go through on other triggers on your own? I guess you need to have a plan. Like I say, 20 triggers, I do 10 in the first 2 days. I share my information, I start looking at information coming through. I mean, I'm doing my own research as well on the remaining 10. So basically you're doing research on all 20 yourself, but it's just that you're staggering it. The first 10, you're doing it from scratch. The remaining 10, for instance, you are doing it using or leveraging off the work of others. And I'm going to spend 2 minutes talking about that, which Rendani spent a lot of time talking to. Guys, research is not data collection. Receiving research from your team members, colleagues, London Pack, or anyone else, it's not research. It's data collection. Research is you now starting to go through that information, reading it, making your own summaries and what you find useful to go into your file. Making your own notes, challenging it. Because, and when I say challenging it, it's picking up a phone and calling Temba and say, Temba, I see you've got this piece in your research. It doesn't make sense to me. What does it mean about what you have? And then talking to it and be like, okay, I see. And then dropping the call and say, yeah, I find what is useful for me are the following points, which I'll copy from Temba. And like Rendani says, it's not word for word copying or just printing the whole annual report, which Temba shared with you guys. How do you effectively research a strategy trigger so that your answer are not a generic internet dump? You interrogate the information. And actually, the best person to answer this one is Rendani. Rendani, can I pass this question to you? Maybe if you could just spend a minute and a half. How do you effectively research a strategy trigger so that your answer are not a generic internet dump? SWOT analysis and the likes.
All right, then thank you, Fedi. Yeah, and it's something that we were going to spend a bit of time on, especially from a response perspective. So it essentially talks to this concept of contextualizing. When you are doing the research, first of all, one will need to appreciate that yes, companies could be in the same sectors, but they are not essentially following or pursuing same strategies. And also the cool that could mean the customer group is different, that could mean the product is different, and so on. So the idea is to say, one, let me start at a point where I understand what I am trying to understand. So for instance, I could say, all right, this is a company in the property sector. property sector is quite broad. There's residential, there's retail, there's so on and so on. So you then zoom in and then, all right, I'm here, I'm looking at what? At retail property group. Then who are the players in this particular space? What are they saying? And which company can I use probably as a proxy or as a consideration for understanding the issues? All right, I'm picking, say, Vukile, someone could pick FA Vest and so on. Then I've got Vukile, and now when I'm busy reading the issues, I could then find that, oh, wait, they're related to what is mentioned in the pre-release. And then this is where I start now drawing connections. And therefore, some things will merit more research and others will not require additional research. And then that's the process that you will then follow to say that, oh, okay, this one developed most in urban areas, mine developed most in this particular area. Let me now move forward to say, what about the players, or what about the strategy, or what about this portfolio of their property? What are the issues that they are facing? And it then becomes much more intimate. It is now no longer that I've researched the growth point and so on, and we're saying that, but okay, to what extent, to what level, how is this relevant, and so on and so on. So the idea is to always consider the research against what is in the pre-release, because that's the point of the pre-release. And I always say that the pre-release can never be misleading. Otherwise, it defeats the whole purpose of why it's even given in the first place. So you need to intimately understand the contents and be able to research on the issues coming from there. So that is how you need to think about it. Hope that makes sense.
Correct. Makes sense. Absolute sense. And like Rendani, I like what you're saying, that pre-release can never mislead you. I always think about a pre-release as a note from a client to say, to invite you to a meeting and say, come to our meeting or come and meet with us because we want to talk about the following.
Yes.
So they won't send you astray and say, we want to talk about this, and then they get there and they speak about something else. And they'll actually call you to a meeting to want to talk about exactly the core of what they spoke about. They might give you new information that they forgot to include in the initial, but it's still part and parcel. It actually complements the pre-release rather than it's actually completely different.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you very much.
Cool, thanks, Rendani. Okay, so any advice on when to print the information? Can I print? You can print as you go. That is probably the best approach. Print as you go. Or some people, you could have a filing system on your PC, and in terms of what is really making it to your file, and you can print it right at the end. How much time do we spend on industry research? And like it will be a bit of time, not more than a day, of course. And I think Rendani is going to deal with this tomorrow in quite a bit of detail. But you've got to research the industry, and that's where he's going to take you through different areas of the industry, or what to look out for when you are researching the industry. I want to actually then now look into the anticipated task. So now in your table, you could just, this is not to actually sport, but it's actually just to start getting your mindset into, what could be they looking for? What could they called me to a meeting. What could they be wanting us to discuss really on the day? And does not necessarily mean if you don't come up with good anticipated task, or the tasks are actually completely different to what you had anticipated, you will be completely thrown off, or you will be thrown off to start with. No, you're not going to be. You're just trying to get your mind into an anticipated task mode. And once you come up with the anticipated task, I'm in no way saying you need to draft a solution. Don't. You've got to just get yourself prepared. Don't draft any solution. Okay. So back to this. Remember, you understood, you identified the triggers, you put them into a table with areas and the action plan on an individual level. You met your team, you decided on the responsibilities, you came back and re-looked at your individual plan and say, does the team plan fit into mine? Are there any areas that I need to pick up that have been allocated to other team members that I'm not comfortable at an individual level that I must do before I could wait for the team to give me, and then let me do the research. Like I said, the research is a systematic investigation into and study of material sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. You do not just say, oh, so and so shared quite useful information, I will put it into my file. No, you systematically work through it, identify facts that are relevant to the case study and what you think is useful, and you understand it. It's all in your head now, as in now you are more than happy to have it in your file, but it's firstly in your head. Like you are a walking specialist in the industry, in the technical areas that I mentioned in the pre-release, of every single technical area, of every single business type of information. You've identified the risks in the business, how they're mitigating them, how they could better mitigate them. All those things have been researched and you are prepared and ready for the meeting. Again, obviously, like I said, avoid sharing the information with other people on the last day. It could cause people to panic. So if you don't want to receive, also don't share, unless obviously specifically asked, because you could share something with me on day 3, and then I find it useful, but I put it to work on it on day 4. But on day 4, when I go through my millions of emails, I can't find it. I might just ask you on the last day, please resend it. But I know I've worked through it. So it's not, obviously when I'm asking for it, I know I'm expecting it. So it's not going to make me panic. But also avoid sharing things with people in the last minute, because it's not to their advantage. Right. Can we look into this? Oh, sorry. Do I keep on saying tomorrow? I mean Wednesday, sorry, Wednesday. The session 2. Thank you. Sorry for making for confusing it like that. Okay. So, and I just want you, again, we're going to use this group dynamic exercise to identify issues. Actually, just say pro or good to identify something that this team did very well, and say con or a shortcoming for something that you like, I don't like. So as I read, you can just use the chat box to indicate those things. I was in a group of 12 people, all repeaters, as we failed the 2018 APC exam. The group consisted of trainees from audit firms, banks, and public sector entities. On the day of the pre-release information, we read the document and identified triggers individually in the morning. We later met as a group around 12 noon to discuss the document, triggers, key themes, industry research, etc., and divided the document into sections of groups of 2 people. We were all responsible for understanding and analyzing the whole document, but we decided that people will be champions for their sections, which meant they had to become experts for their sections. We met on the Sunday. Okay, so this, remember the 2019 assessment would have been written on the Wednesday. So they met on the Sunday, so means your Monday, to discuss our findings. The two people presented the key issues or findings from their sections, and we critiqued them. Our research and findings in our file proved to be useful, and my understanding of the case study was good. I spent the Monday and Tuesday, because they're writing on the Wednesday, remember, going through the whole document and trying to make it my own, and linking key issues, triggers, themes, and industry research. Let me go and see. Sure, in the chat, there's only one comment. Too many people in the group and no diversity in the group, as all team members are repeaters. Okay, interesting. And I like that. Yeah. One could look at it as a pro, one could look at it as a con. Maybe that's why the candidate that popped this comment is not really saying it's a pro or it's a con, because maybe the too many people, I definitely do agree, it was too many people in the group. And a big team might just not be easy to control, or you might end up doing 4 triggers out of the 20. And then because there is too much sharing, you want to keep your team as small as possible. Does not necessarily mean you don't have to share information beyond your group or access other information beyond your group. But just to get it controllable, you might limit the number of people. No diversity because they are all repeaters. Very good point. You might need fresh blood in it as well. Trainees are from a variety of industries, so that is a good and different perspectives. I like that as well. Too big, I spoke to that. Tembeka, thank you. Okay, diverse experience. Only 2 of the 12 members engaged the content on Sunday, or rather 2 people presented. Yeah. And also these presentations, I hope you guys keep them succinct and very quick. And like, I mean, you don't want to spend the entire Sunday or Monday listening to presentations. There is no time, guys. 3 hours. We need to be in there and out. People must share their research way ahead of time. Yes, they don't have to share everything because maybe they're still busy researching, but as they finish a trigger, share so that people can start reading, critiquing, sending their comments, and it's a circle. Rather than have to wait and go and listen to a 12-hour presentation on the day, we get tired. They seem to have interrogated the research thoroughly, which is nice. I pray for the day we get a case study on a municipality. It's coming, Bonds. One day, AXA trainees are at a disadvantage through on the JSE listed companies. I do think AXA trainees are very versatile. Put them in any industry, they will do extremely well. Equally so with the non-AXA trainees. They must one day get a municipality and they must excel in it as well. Moleboheng, individual trigger identification is good. Good approach to pre-release period. Individual work was done and good planning to manage group meetings by splitting the presenters. Thank you, Moleboheng. Presentation may lead to a talk show. I hate talk shows. Good use of presentations in group meetings to enrich individual research. Absolutely. Spend time on Monday and Tuesday on their own. What I didn't like Day about that spending time on Monday and Tuesday, it seemed like it was a file already and they're just making it their own by just highlighting on stuff. I wanted them to actually indicate, but I could be wrong because I don't really know their approach. I just read what slide, but I wanted them to actually really make it their own by actually interrogating the information that has been shared, and over time making their own notes and deciding on what makes it to the file and what doesn't. Emphasize that everyone is responsible for understanding and analyzing the whole document. I agree. The candidate did not do much research alone before the team met alone, heavily relied on others. Maybe that is a con. Okay, good. You guys are able to identify the great and the not so great things in the document. Okay. Right. Assessment file, last minute notes. We spoke about sharing of notes for the file. One area is about resolving disputes or disagreements in the team, slacking team members. And Randani is going to deal with how does one use the file on the day of the assessment. So because I'm not dealing with on the day of assessment. So on Wednesday, we'll deal with that part. But I want to talk to disputes, disagreements. There are differences between disputes and disagreements. Let's start with the easy one, which is a disagreement. A disagreement is where I'm saying, I understand this particular part of the case to say this, and someone says, I understand it this way. Okay? It means we're having a disagreement on the interpretation of the facts that have been presented to us. That's when we need to discuss. We need to consult, maybe even beyond the two people that are being in disagreement. All what you need to be doing, guys, a good team member is a listening team member, is a team member that listens. Okay, don't be stubborn. I mean, listening does not mean you're wrong. It means you're willing to hear other views and really listen with a mindset of saying, yeah, my understanding might be wrong, and ask the question, why? You know, the best way to actually, for someone to actually convince you is you need to say, why am I wrong? Or like, why do you say what you're saying? If you keep on asking them that, you will start seeing or converging, the two individuals will converge. And also get other views. And the views must just not be like, I agree with Rendani, full stop. Because Rendani was in the top 10. That can't be a reason. We need to really understand exactly what is the basis of you agreeing with Rendani. And the agreeing or the disagreeing should actually not even matter, but it should be more about the facts and the supporting information. A dispute is where, here I'm just talking about conflict, like a logistical conflict, to say, oh, so-and-so, we're having a dispute because so-and-so didn't attend a meeting or didn't share the information on time. Guys, you don't have time to be resolving those type of issues during the 5 days. Move on. Okay? We'll find that person when we go out for drinks during celebration. Okay? When someone is dropping the ball, someone must be ready to pick it up, rather than spending time on trying to figure out why are they dropping the ball. That's not fair. Can we call them and find out? Someone must be willing to pick up the pieces and move on. You only have 5 days. It talks to the slacking team members as well. Okay. We spoke about anticipated tasks. There's just a comment that I want to get through. Brighton is the bare minimum blocks to have in farm. Okay, so those are your sort of like your section dividers. Thanks, Brighton. That is actually what I wanted to cover with you guys, but we still have a bit of time. Well, I know we went beyond time, but I would still like to cover some of the action and some of the questions. But maybe before we cover the actions, I want Rendani to come in, indicate what we'll still be covering on Wednesday, just so that your questions are not based on that. You know it's still coming. Rendani, do you want to just give us a summary of what is coming on Wednesday?
All right. Thank you, Fedi. Yes. So today, as you might have seen, it was just to cover the guidance before the assessment. And I think a lot of questions have come up to say, on the day of assessment, I struggled to finish I've been told that I'm not providing enough coverage. I've been told that I'm not dealing with enough depth. I don't understand how to really apply these pervasive skills that I keep reading about. How do I actually go about doing that? I've got all this research that I've accumulated in the file. How do I really then use it under exam conditions? Do I just take the information, talk about it generally, or do I talk about what the company needs to do in relation to what I've seen and so on? So those are some of the questions that we've gotten over the period. And we thought that let's just share our guidance and our views on some of those issues, and also the issue about on ethics as well, and just around communication and what is it that is expected of you as an entry-level CA, and so on and so on. So those are some of the issues that we'll then be focusing on. So as a start, I'll really want you to walk through the APC 2019. So you'll see that we will not be dealing with any specific task, but it might be that if I'm just then going through communication, we might then say, let's look at task I, because this had this particular points that I want you to just specifically think about. Then I might then say, all right, let's look about what it means or what is expected when you apply business acumen, or when you apply critical thinking, which task is then the best one to walk through. So the idea is that please come prepared. So by 5 o'clock tomorrow, the slides will already be up on that link. We'll just send the communication via the system so that you are aware. Then you can just go through the link and download the slides just to prepare tomorrow evening. And then come Wednesday evening, you are clear. If you've got any preliminary question, it'll be good to then work through the slide, work through the APC 2019 in order to really engage. I think that will be the most important thing. Engage, ask more questions, and make sure that you are able to have clarity on your concerns before the assessment next week. So APC 2019 is the focus case study, work through the pre-release, information on the day, task, the specimen responses, as well as the examiner's reports. So we'll be touching the different elements just to bring everything together.
Thanks, Rendani. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Philip.
Right, guys, any questions, last comments before I close? Okay. Looks like everyone is just thanking us. Or is there anyone who wants to open their mic and ask? Fantastic, doesn't look like it. Okay, right. No, thank you. Thank you, team. We will definitely be back here on Wednesday night to do a final round, and then we are ready indeed. Okay, have a good night, team.
Right,
Bye.
thank you, everyone.